Are you the doer in your family? Are you the one that everybody turns to when a decision needs to be made or when something needs to be done, especially when it comes to maybe your parents' money and their health care? If so, this is the episode for you. Please stay tuned to this episode of Wealth on the Move, the podcast. Your life journey doesn't stand still, and neither should your wealth. Welcome to Wealth on the Move, the podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Wealth on the Move, the podcast. I'm your host, Will Hoffman, and we are in November, and November is National Caregiver Awareness Month. And that really shines a light on a huge thing that financial advisors all help with, the conversations we have. And my guest today has a very specific experience that not only do we want her to talk about, but she's written about it. We have with us today Beth Pinsker, personal finance columnist with MarketWatch, also a CFP designation holder, which we're going to talk about here in a second, and the author of the newly released book, My Mother's Money. Beth, welcome to Wealth on the Move, the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you and hear about your insight and talk to you about the new book. Congratulations on that release. That was just this week, right?
Yes, I am an author in my fourth day.
Nice. Congratulations. So tell us a little bit about yourself first before we get in away from the book, so we can learn a little bit about your background and then we'll talk about the book.
So I started off as a film critic, which is not the traditional path to become a CFP. And people ask me this all the time, and I can't really explain how I ended up being a personal finance journalist and running a personal finance website, and then I ended up as a columnist and editor at Reuters doing personal finance. And it was there that I decided to take the step to become a CFP. It was available. They were going to pay for it, and it seemed like a good way to master my subject matter. And I got really into it, and I really enjoyed it, and I ended up getting passing the test, which is not an easy test.
No, not at all.
And so now I'm Beth Pinsker with initials after my name, and I do my CE every year, and I keep up on it. But it helps me talk to people who are financial professionals because I understand the terminology they're using, and I think when they see those initials after my name, they know that they can have a certain level of conversation with me because they know they can baseline my experience with the material.
Gotcha. So a film critic. I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies that have been made about investing in Wall Street, things like Wall Street 2, The Wolf of Wall Street, Boiler Room. Did you ever get to be a critic of any of those?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Gosh,
so
yeah.
Give me your favorite one of those that you'd like to critique.
My favorite one of those. Oh my goodness. The one about the used car salesman. What was that one?
Dallas Buyers Club?
No, it was I'm sorry. I have my short-term memory is not the greatest when it comes.
I'm catching you a little off guard here because we want to talk about the book. But I didn't know you were a film critic, and I love all those Wall Street movies, and The Wolf of Wall Street. Boiler Room is without a doubt my favorite.
Boiler Room is a great one. There was one, I want to say that Richard Dreyfuss was in it, but
that Glengarry Glen Ross?
Maybe it's Glengarry Glen Ross that I'm thinking of. But yeah, that sort of David Mamet, fast-talking, hard-charging, sales tactic is exactly what, you learn in the CFP world is not what you want to do.
Right. Nothing is further from the truth with how our business is conducted. Right.
Exactly. And I'm trying to stretch that a little even further because I want the whole family to be considered. And when it came to my own finances, you couldn't separate that from what was going on with my mom. And I think that happens in a lot of people's families that, you might have two people, like a man, a husband and wife, or, whatever the configuration of the couple is with genders and all of that. And they're in front of you and you think about them and you don't think about everybody that they're responsible for. And I want to, extend the family. And then I want to also My book is only about bad decisions. My book is when your back is against the wall and somebody's sick, there are no optimal decisions. And when you go to CFP school and when you deal with people all day long, trying to help them with their finances, you're trying to get them to the best possible decision and the best possible behavior that you can. And in a caregiving situation, that's just not the case. You're dealing with all worst case scenarios, and it's happening right now in front of you. And it's very hard as the professional in that case to guide people to a good decision when you're not sure how they're making that decision, because you might want to think in terms of what's most economical, what's going to preserve resources, what's, in my parlance and my lay parlance, what's cheapest. But when somebody's sick, what's cheapest is not a consideration.
Or it becomes irrelevant, right?
My book is for bad financial. My book is when you don't have the option of making good financial decisions, and it's very hard for professionals in that circumstance to operate, because we like to operate and give advice in a perfect world, and sickness and death is an imperfect world.
Give us a little bit of background information on what motivated you to write the book, and what led to the experience that ended up becoming My Mother's Money.
So what happened is I got that phone call that everybody gets, right? Sometime in your life, you will have this phone call, if you haven't already, and you've been lucky enough to avoid it, that the phone call that stops time, the phone call that something bad has happened.
Right.
And for my mom, it was a spinal surgery. She called me up and she said, I'm getting my back operated on. I don't know what's going to happen. It's November 15th. Can you come a few days beforehand and help me get set up with whatever we're going to need, and then handle things for me until I'm ready to take the reins back? And, I'm the daughter. Of course, I'm going to say yes. So many people get put in that position. It's really hard to say no. And you don't have any legal obligation to do it, but it's family, so you do it. People I talked to for the book, I was so surprised by this, that people do it even though they don't like their family. People do it for parents who are abusive to them. People do it for parents who are addicts. People take care of other people in their lives, even though they don't have a good relationship. It's just a testament to how much we're all connected to each other and how essential the work is that needs to be done, because you can't not do it. Somebody has to do it. And
somebody has to. And I mean, deep down, we can be critical, we can be spiteful, we can be hateful, but at the end of the day, we all still care for one another. At least I like to think so. And all of that goes aside when that phone call happens. You're right.
Yeah. So when I went down to my mom's surgery, it was November. I had just started at MarketWatch in September. So I was like 2 months into a new job. And all of a sudden, I've got this big caretaking situation. And I have 2 teenage children, and I'm divorced. So when they're with me, it's just me and them. And it was a lot to juggle. And I was sitting by my mom's bedside, and I had a column due, right? And I was like, what am I going to write about? I can't think about anything. My brain was mush. And I thought, okay, I'll just write about this. This is what everybody's going through right now. I'm 54 now, so I was, just turned 52. And this is when caregiving hits. This is what everybody my age is going through. And so I wrote that first column about the cheat sheet that my mom had given me before her surgery, with all of her information on it. And I wrote about how important that was to have, and how helpful it is to, know where everybody, know what they're taking, know who their doctors are, know what surgery she had in the past. Because when somebody can't communicate that to you, you're sort of stuck. And the column was really popular. And so as I hit obstacles with my mom, I just kept writing about it. And the biggest obstacle I think I faced was I needed to be her power of attorney. And that wasn't a matter of just handing me the form saying, you're my power of attorney, which I thought was the case. That was my understanding of how it worked. I made sure my mom had the proper forms. They were signed, they were notarized, everything was good about them. She handed them to me, and I thought that was the end of the story. I was woefully naive, and I think a lot of people are, that's the end of it. You wave the papers around and you say, I'm the power of attorney.
So I'm in charge now, right?
Yeah, but it's not true. And when I went to the bank, to, get put on her checking account so that I could write checks in her name, they said no to me. They're like, full stop, no. And I thought, what the heck? I've never heard about this before. What are you talking about? You won't accept my mom's papers as power of attorney. And they said she has to come in here in person. And I'm like, she's immobile in the hospital. How is she going to come in here? And so many people face this. When I wrote about this for MarketWatch, it was the most popular thing I've ever written in my entire life. It got more page views than I think cumulatively that my work had gotten up until that point. And I've written for major publications my whole life. And it just struck a nerve. So many people have encountered this. So many people are worried about it. Nobody knows what to do. The banks make it really difficult. And the information that's out there is cursory, like people, because everybody's situation is different. All the information out there stops at the point where, like, you say, you should have a power of attorney document. And then the information ends and they never tell you what happens next. And so it was my mission in life after that point to tell people what happens next. Like this is what's going to happen if somebody's sick. And this is what you need to do if you're the person who's responsible in that circumstance. And there are 63 million of us out there who are family caretakers, family caregivers in some capacity, whether it's the financial person or the medical person or the, the person who, goes and gets groceries or takes somebody to an appointment. That's a lot of people out there actively engaged in this at this very minute.
And you're in that sandwich generation where you're not only taking care of mom.
Yes.
You've got your own children that still need you and that you're taking care of. And that's the demographic that is really, really pressed, is fulfilling both ends of that obligation.
And the great thing the great responsibility of that is, the generation that's going through that right now is Generation X, which is my generation.
Mm-hmm.
And we are the little generation between two huge generations. So there's a much smaller number of people caring for the very big number of people on either end of us. So there's a lot of kids and there's a lot of old people. And Generation X, the 50-year-olds, are right in the middle there, just taking care of everybody. We have a lot on our plates.
Yes. And so mom has the surgery, and take us from there. You had the power of attorney battles with the bank.
Yes.
What other things did you have to navigate beyond just the bank? Because I mean, I know, and I tell our clients this, especially when somebody passes away, that unfortunately our profession can be punishing in that instance. The firms make things challenging. Everybody needs signatures in triplicate with notary stamps and signatures of guarantee and powers of attorney and letters of testament there. And we need all of these things. And we know we need all these things to because it's the right thing to do to legitimize the entire process. But it is punishing.
Yes.
Especially when you're grieving or caregiving in your instance. So tell us a little bit more about what was going on, because we know that there's more to this than just the bank that motivated you to write the book.
So the biggest thing that I had to do was manage my mother's financial life.
Okay.
She had surgery and then she kept having complication after complication after complication. And she was never well again after that point. And it went on for about 8 or 9 months before she passed away. And in those 8 or 9 months, I had to take on another adult human being's financial responsibilities fully, without very much instruction from her at all. And that, is tough for me to even manage in a busy life, my own financial responsibilities. I have a hard time keeping up on, the out-of-network reimbursement, paperwork that I have to send into the insurance company. and, all the school fees and more, like I automate as much as I can, but even my existence is hard. But my mother, had a mortgage. She has electric bills. She had long-term care insurance reimbursements to deal with, her Medicare, supplements to deal with, the drug payments and the co-pays and all of those kinds of things. And, her newspaper subscription and her Netflix subscription. And she had 1,000 million bills because she was an adult human being who was living a full life. She was 76 and she was fully taking care of herself.
And you don't think when you're in that instance to make sure that my Netflix password is written down so my daughter can cancel the subscription if necessary. That's the last thing you think about.
That is the last thing.
Instant.
The other thing is that I was managing the nest egg so that we could use that money to take care of her. And I had to be the steward of it. And I think this is where the financial planners usually come into the picture. But because that was my expertise, I did that on my own for her. But that is the big question that everybody has. How are we going to pay for this all? How are we going to make mom's money last and not have to end up paying for it ourselves or putting her in a substandard care situation? And that's where every anxiety ends up in every family. How are we going to pay for this? And it's hard. It depends on how much money you're starting with. It depends on how much money you're spending and, and who's involved. I've been talking about this idea of double self-dealing. In stock market trades, there's rules against self-dealing. You can't make a deal that's in your own favor because that's illegal. When you are managing your parents' money that will eventually become your money, you are self-dealing the entire time.
Every decision, right?
Every decision is a decision that affects everybody down the line from your parent. And when you have siblings and other people involved, and not everybody is on the same wavelength about that, there's a lot of feelings involved. If your sibling thinks that you are self-dealing in your own favor, they're going to get mad at you. If, because the standard thing that comes up is, a parent is sick and you have to decide where that parent's going to live and where that parent's going to get care. If one kid wants the parent to stay at home with caregivers and that costs $10,000 a month, and the other kid wants that parent to go into a nursing home and that costs $5,000 a month, who's making the right call there, and why are they making
right?
One always says to the other one, you just want to put mom in the home because that's going to cost less money and there'll be money left over for you. I want to keep mom at home. And the other one's like, you only want to do that so that mom thinks you're the favorite. And, it just goes downhill from there.
Right. Every childhood argument over at the dining room table kind of reemerges and bubbles up.
Yes.
30 years later or 40 years later when we're doing this.
You are the financial manager of that situation from an outsider perspective. If you're the financial planner who's trying to help in that situation, you're caught in the middle of all that. Try running a family meeting when that's the family meeting. How are you going to navigate that? I put that question to a group of, there's an elder planning specialist concentration through the Financial Planning Association. And I visited, I took the class myself last year and found it really useful. And then I went and visited this year, and the class I went to yesterday, they were talking about the family meeting and, what financial planners had the experience running a family meeting, and how would you structure a family meeting? And I'm like, in real life, this is what a family meeting is. It's people upset at each other over something that happened in second grade and throwing insults at each other and all accusing each other of trying to take mom and dad's money. That's what a family meeting.
So in addition to all that, you have Medicare decisions to make, you have facility decisions to make, you have money
medical
investment decisions, medical decisions. Yeah. I mean, take me through that, because it was, if I'm reading this correctly, 2022, the market also really wasn't in a great place in 2022. So, in addition to all of that, we have, inflationary scares and a wild swinging market. How is
Yeah.
all of that impacting these decisions?
Well, so the way my mom had her money structured, it didn't impact them at all because my mom
Okay.
was all in on guaranteed annuity contracts that were not
Okay.
annuitized. But you have a professional audience, right? So they'll understand all of those terms, maybe. I didn't necessarily understand the entire structure until I went to my mom's files. And she had brochure after brochure explaining these things, which I am sure she never read. But my parents were teachers, and that'll start to explain some of it. Teachers in 403B plans, which are the 1Ks of the public world. In
For public
403B
teachers, right?
plans, teachers are typically steered towards annuity plans. They're steered towards,
Right.
you know, guaranteed contracts rather than market investments. And so my mom had
Right.
gone all in on this. She wanted to be able to sleep at night, and somebody at some point convinced her that that was the way that you got security. Teachers are
Okay.
conservative, careful people.
Sure.
And what she wanted was to know that her principal was protected. So she was in these contracts that protected her principal and had, a downside cap so that she couldn't lose more than a certain amount of money depending on the market performance, and an upside cap too, so
Right.
that she couldn't make more than a certain amount. But she was guaranteed, certain provisions within the contract to make a certain amount of growth per year. The problem was that most of the money that she had was from a death benefit on my father's annuity contract. And when he had died,
Okay.
just about 5 years prior, that death benefit money was like a death rider. That death rider money had gone into one of these annuity contracts, and it was less than 5 years since it had started. And to break into that money
Okay.
was going to cost surrender fees and other, losses in the guarantees. And so the financial advisor was trying to protect us from that.
And her scenario, I was going to say the scenario didn't matter. Why you needed to break into it was irrelevant.
Yeah, there were no conditional
Okay.
clauses on it. It was a time-based clause.
Okay.
And if she had gotten sick a year later, we wouldn't have had any problem with it in terms of the surrender fees. So it was just a matter of timing. But the timing was tight, right? My mom,
Sure.
she had a certain amount of cash on hand from her required minimum distribution, and we were spending it at a great clip.
Right.
So this was my job. My job was to say, okay, there's a certain amount of money here. We're spending $15,000 a month on your care, which is more money than I usually spend in
Right.
a month. So the numbers were boggling everybody. And then, it's my job to keep track of it. Like, okay, this is how much cash we have. This is how much we're spending right now. This is how long that's going to last. And then we're going to need more cash. Where are we going to get the cash from? Well, the cash needed to come from these annuity accounts that were locked up. And I was trying to unlock them because I'm like, we have enough cash to make it to August, but we don't have cash beyond that. But the contract didn't come up until October. So what were we going to do from August till October? I didn't have the money to float, $15,000 a month. I would have had to break into my own
The
retirement.
facilities won't just run a tab, right? They
No.
won't just say, yeah, it's okay. You can pay us in October. Who was that? Bluto from Popeye. We'll take care now and pay you in October. They weren't going to go for that.
And this is where knowledge of the care system in America comes into play, because 90%, I don't know if that's the exact number, but a large percentage of people think Medicare covers the long-term care.
Right.
And it doesn't. And it's just like a blanket no right now. There's legislation always proposing for Medicare to cover long-term care, but it doesn't. It covers short-term hospital stays and short-term rehab stays. And my mom had her allotment of 100 days in rehab, and they kept trying to kick her out before the 100 days. And then after those 100 days, you either have to pay on your own or you have to apply for Medicaid. And Medicaid is a whole different ballgame, and you have to run down all of your assets.
You have to be out of money first.
Medicaid will run a tab for you. Like once you put in your
Yeah.
Medicaid application, they will run a tab. But like recently, they've cut back the amount of tab they will run for you. It used to be 6 months. Now it's down to 3, and I think they were moving to 2. And it might be eventually like a 30-day tab. And so that doesn't buy you much time in a facility to get your ducks in a row,
Right.
because the look back period on Medicaid is 5 years. So if you want your parent to eventually go on Medicaid and spend down their assets, you have to put up, a great deal of money in the meantime. And there are facilities out there that will require you to pay in full pay 2 to 4 years. It's in the contract. You have to pay in 2 to 4 years of full pay before they will allow you to switch to Medicaid and accept Medicaid as a payment. And that's if they take Medicaid at all. Some of the facilities don't take, the private pay facilities don't take Medicaid. And so if your parent is in a private facility, in assisted living or a multi-tier facility, and you haven't thought through the whole trajectory of things, and they don't take Medicaid, when your parent gets to that point where they've run out of money, they have to move. I talked to somebody from my book who was in that exact circumstance. Her mom was in a multi-tier facility. She was paying for it out of pocket. She got divorced. Her ex-husband decided that he didn't need to be kicking in his part of the $12,000 for the mother's care anymore because they were divorced. And so she couldn't foot the whole bill on her own. The facility didn't take Medicaid. And so she had to get her mother qualified for Medicaid and then move her out of the facility.
And find one. I mean, depending on their area, there may not be room. We're in Western Pennsylvania, and some facilities have waiting lists to get in because of the amount of care that doesn't exist.
And if you're in Western Pennsylvania, you might have to send them to Ohio.
Right.
And then apply for Medicaid in Ohio because it's state-based, and Pennsylvania, Medicaid doesn't apply in Ohio. I talked to people from my book who did that too. When you're on the edge of the state, you might have to go out of state. Yeah, so it's a lot. It's a lot.
The book covers all of these lessons. Is that correct? It covers the entire gamut that you went through. What are, after experiencing that and writing the book, and I don't want you to give too much away because we want folks to go out and buy the book, what tips do you have for folks that are not in your situation yet?
Yeah.
Things that they should be doing or that they should be encouraging mom or dad to do now so that they don't get into that situation?
My message is to the family doer. There's always one in every family. In my experience, still in this gender role universe that we live in, it's the daughter. It's usually an eldest daughter of some kind. But more and more, there are only children, and there are, whoever it is in your family who makes sure everybody brings the right dish to Thanksgiving. That's the person that my book is for, because that person needs to send out an email to everybody and say, if you have a car accident or some circumstance befalls you or you run out of money, if I'm the person who's going to get called in that situation, I need you to make sure that you have these 2 things, or 3 things, and I need a copy of them. And if you don't have them, here are links, and here's how you get them. And those things are the healthcare proxy, a power of attorney, and some kind of afterlife document like a will or a trust or whatever it is that you need for that afterlife period that pertains to your circumstances. If you are the doer in your family, if you are the one who's going to get that phone call, it's on you to make sure that the people who are going to be in trouble have those things set up, because you're the one that's going to be left with the mess to clean up.
Yes. Because chances are you're also the executor or the trustee, and it's all going to fall in your lap at some point. And I don't know if you found this after earning your CFP designation. I know that we have a young advisor in our office now, and it's amazing how many financial decisions are not financial at all. None of it we think we're going to be making all these decisions about stocks and bonds and mutual funds and ETFs and asset allocation, and the market's going to do this. We should make this move. And the biggest help we make we have for folks is in these instances where it is planning. It is the conversations that are necessary so that when this happens.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know if you said, I'm assuming you have siblings.
hmm
Was the assumption, well, Beth is a CFP. She'll be able to handle this.
Um,
She'll be able to lead through this. She'll be able to do this for mom. Mom may have said, well, Beth's a CFP. I don't have to worry about this stuff.
Yeah, so my mom trusted me with that sort of stuff, and my brother had very little interest in the bill paying part of things.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it doesn't take a specialist to do any of this stuff. Like
Right.
closing the Netflix account is a human being task, not a profession. Like you
Not a
don't need a
professional test, right?
CFP to close the Netflix account, but you need the doer. You need somebody who's
Well, you
organized,
still
who's
need the
going
password. You
yeah,
still, right?
you still need the password and the phone to two-factor authenticate. But you need somebody who's going to think ahead. And financial planners are good at the Monte Carlo planning assumptions.
Right.
Like you can throw multiple scenarios at a financial planner and they'll consider a lot of information at the same time and come up with different pathways. And I think that that's where the skill comes in, rather than it's not a great math problem, but it's more complicated than addition and subtraction.
Sure.
There's a social security check coming in and there's money going out, but there's money growing at the same time. And the money coming in and the money going out change all the time. And you have to be able to do the math on that, and keep those scenarios straight in your head. And I think that's one thing that I was really good at that my brother, who's a historian, was not very good at the practical parts of things. He was very good at dealing with the doctors, and I hated dealing with the doctors. So we did,
Well, that's
one
good that you
thing,
guys could complement one another
yeah,
there.
exactly. That's what families, that's families in the best case scenario. Families that work together don't always work on the same task together. They divide and conquer. And so when you have people with various skills, you need to lean into those skills. When there's a person who's organized, you give them the organizational task. When there's a person who's more conceptual, you give them the more conceptual tasks. Or in my brother's case, he was the one that schlepped the garbage down to the basement. Like that was the task that he got entrusted.
Who do you hope is reading this book? You mentioned the doer. Is it just the doer, or do you want mom and dad to also read the book so that they're getting some insight as to what they should be establishing for themselves?
What I'm hoping is that it helps people have a dialogue, because between those two sets of people, the doers and the not doers, because I think that people and families have a hard time starting this discussion. And I've heard it over and over from people.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you bring up money, mom and dad shut down. And as soon as you bring up extra stuff to do, the doers shut down. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a disconnect in a lot of families, and that's why this conversation never happens. And what I was hoping to do for my book is open some people's eyes by telling my story and have them see the why, the why of it all. And then so if you read something that really opened your eyes in this book, you might take a little chunk of that and say, Mom, can you read this one chapter? Because I think there's some stuff in here that we need to work on. And then the mom can read the chapter and see what happened in my family, and connect with it, because it's a story and it's not threatening. And it really just opens your eyes to the dangers that are out there and what could happen to you if you don't do something about it. And then that might open the mother up to talking to the daughter about it. Finally. I've seen it work, so I know it's possible. There was a family that I was helping, and they were getting nowhere on the finances. Every time they brought up money, it was a fight. There was yelling.
Mm-hmm.
There was, stop trying to take over. Like it's like the conversation you have when you need somebody to stop driving. Right? It's a fight.
Right.
It's really hard to do. And finances are, sometimes even more private than that. And what had happened is this family had never, the dad was a war vet, and he had never signed up for his VA benefits. And I was like, that that's the number one priority here is you got to go find out what you can get from the VA. And he's like, no, I don't need charity. The VA is complicated. I don't want to deal with it. I was like, no, this is absolutely essential, and you have to do this now before anything bad happens. And so I gave them the chapter on VA benefits, and he and his wife read it, and they're like, oh yeah, we need to do this now. And they arranged, there's lots of VA benefits in their area, and there's somebody who will drive you from your house and come pick you up and take you to the VA center, which is not close to their house. And so they took them over to the VA. He got hooked up. Not too long after that, he had a health emergency. They put grab bars in his house because he had fallen. They came over, they installed grab bars. Then he got hooked up with a monthly stipend because he was eligible for it, and they were in dire economic circumstances. And then he got sicker, and now they have a home health aid. All paid through.
But if he would have never read your chapter, he wouldn't have signed up and
and his kids would have been paying for it, or his wife would have been doing it and killing herself in order to do it, and the two of them would have fallen in the bathroom, and both of them would have gotten hurt. So I've seen conversations happen when people have their eyes opened, through storytelling. Storytelling is really, really effective, and
yes, I agree.
That's why I put my story out there. Me and my mom both agreed, that this was an okay thing to do. And she helped while she was alive. And, details matter. And I was able to put as much.
And your story and her legacy are now going to help change lives and have their impact. And, it's something our profession should be eternally grateful for and be passing along to our clients, and that our clients should be listening to, and hopefully taking these steps along with us to get their affairs in order. The book, My Mother's Money, on shelves in Amazon now. Make sure you check it out. Beth, where can our listeners find you to follow and learn more?
I am Beth Pinsker wherever I go. My website is Beth Pinsker. And if you do, shameless plug here, but if you do want to get it to your clients, there's a bulk order discount on my website just for people who are, financial professionals or lawyers who want to get it out to their clients. So there's a button for that. And just Beth Pinsker on social media, Beth Pinsker on MarketWatch. I'm easy to find.
Check her out. Follow her articles. We'll link everything in the show notes here. Beth, thank you so much for joining us on Wealth on the Move, the podcast. As always, you can find us at hoffmanwealth.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn under Will Hoffman, AIF. And until next time, please remember to keep your wealth moving.
Beth Pinsker is not affiliated with Hoffman Wealth Management and Private Advisor Group.
Will Hoffman offers investment advice through Private Advisor Group, which is a federally registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult with the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.